Why was this such an exhausting process for Eagles fans?
Well, I mean, first off, thanks for having me on, guys. But second off, this has been going on for months. I mean, anyone in Eagle Nation has been following this week after week after week. People inside the building knew that he was going to be gone as early as March, is what I was told, is that this has been a handshake deal under the desk. It was like, we're going to get this done. And yet Eagle fans had to wait week after week. No, he wants to be here. No, he wants to be gone. It's going to be the Chiefs, the Jaguars, it's the Patriots. Then the whole Mike Vrabel stuff kicked off. Eagle fans were completely exhausted by this. And I, for one, thank AJ for what he did. We don't win Super Bowls without him. We'll talk about that, I'm sure. But we are very relieved that he is gone and we can move forward with the Sean Mannion offense, Jalen, DeVonta Smith, and Mekhi Levin.
Well, let's get into that now then, because we talk about the drama and the social media posts and the reading the book on the sidelines. But AJ Brown did go to 2 Super Bowls with the Eagles and won one. And every single year he was in Philadelphia, he had over 1,000 receiving yards. So all of that combined, how will you and how will Eagles fans remember the AJ Brown experience in Philly?
I think most of us are pretty positive about it. I said on my show yesterday that he's the greatest receiver Philadelphia has ever had. And there's a lot of debate about Terrell Owens versus A.J. Brown. It's really not a comparison, right? You had one good year of Terrell Owens and you didn't win a Super Bowl. You had 4 good years of A.J. Brown. You went to 2 Super Bowls and you won one, and they were in the playoffs every single year. So I look back on it very fondly. A.J. Brown was the best Eagle receiver, again, of my entire lifetime, probably historically. But it also kind of ran its course. And for anyone out there trying to say that, the Eagles got fleeced on this trade because it's a 2028 first-round draft pick. The tweet you guys showed up to open up the show there was a perfect example of why Eagle fans feel pretty good overall today. They gave up a first and a third to get him 4 years ago from Tennessee, and now they've used the best parts of his career. He's exiting his prime. Some think he's way past his prime with the knee issues, which is a whole different topic, and you still get a first-round draft pick in 2028. And so all of that being said, we appreciate what he did. You don't win the Super Bowl without him. But I think Philadelphia can be just as dominant, if not a little bit more, when A.J. Brown is gone this year.
Okay, so stick there for a second, because this is where it gets tricky for me. I agree with you that A.J. Brown at times is just a pain in the ass to deal with. I think we all agree with that, right? But production is production. And this is an Eagles team that's in win now Super Bowl mode. They just lost somebody that's worth a first round pick to another team fighting for a Super Bowl. How did they replace his actual production and get better on the field without him?
I think what people are missing here is the fact that it's going to be a brand new offense in Philadelphia, right? That's fact number A when it comes to getting rid of A.J. Brown. The A.J. Brown offense that was the Ken Patullo, Nick Sirianni style, whatever you want to call it this past season, was essentially line A.J. up one-on-one on the X side and you throw to him no matter what. And if he doesn't get his touches, he's going to be upset. So you got to make sure you force those passes every single game. 8 targets, 9 targets. It doesn't matter if he's double covered. He has got to get the football. This year, everything that we have heard so far, from the entire offseason to the past couple of practices, they're out there today for OTAs, is that this offense is not just 20% different. It's completely different. It's a completely different playbook, and it's all in the Matt LaFleur and Sean McVay style. And so instead of force-feeding one receiver, who, again, was elite and really made a lot of those one-on-one contested catches and was a big reason why Philadelphia won a lot of games, you now have a completely reloaded receiver room with what many people believe is a number 1 wide receiver in DeVonta Smith. Won a Heisman Trophy, had pretty good rookie season without A.J. Brown, and then has been second fiddle to him the past 4 years. He gets to be the number 1. You spent a top 20 draft pick on what people thought was a top 10 caliber player in Mekhi Lemon. They're very excited about him in Philadelphia. Add Dontavian Wicks, that was Sean Mannion's favorite receiver in Green Bay. And then you have this kind of other group of receivers, and second-year guy in Darius Cooper. Philadelphia likes him a lot. Johnny Wilson coming off injury, another internal draft pick that they like, plus Hollywood Brown and Elijah Moore. I think it's going to be addition by subtraction here. You don't have to worry about force-feeding A.J. Brown. You can instead use your new offensive scheme DeVonta Smith open, Puka Nacua style, JSN style, and share the football without the worry of sideline drama that comes with it.
I love Mekhi Lemon. I'm so excited to watch him in this offense. But we know this receiver room looks different. Sounds like this offense is going to look different. But there have been so many reports of some cultural friction happening within the locker room. Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni's relationship, the positivity bunny that we saw in the locker room last year. Of course, the A.J. Brown was part of some of that friction or drama, for lack of a better word, in the locker room. But how much does trading A.J. Brown fix what looks like a questionable culture right now in Philadelphia?
I push back a little bit on the culture as a whole. I think the culture is just fine. I think that the leaders in those locker room would tell you that there's no issue overall, and that the AJ Brown stuff was a separate issue. Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni, I never really kind of bought into the fact that they had beef. I think they just had some differing of opinions, but I think they're very much on the same page now. And Jalen said in his most recent press conference, he's loving what he's seeing from the Sean Mannion scheme and style and just the coaching abilities of Sean Mannion to make sure Jalen's up to speed on, everything that he needs to go ahead and learn. And AJ being gone now, they will tell you externally, and Saquon Barkley did this last week, that there was never any beef with AJ Brown, that he loves AJ Brown. There's no problem with AJ Brown. That to me is external stuff. I think now it's going to be a weight off the shoulders, especially of the offense, just to kind of, okay, we don't have to worry about force feeding him. We don't have to worry about answering media questions every single week about AJ Brown doing this or that on the sideline. We can just focus on football. And what I think a lot of people are missing externally outside the Eagle fan base is this roster is absolutely loaded, even without AJ Brown. This is a top 3 defensive unit. It could be maybe the best defensive unit in the National Football League. They have all pros, young all pros, all over the secondary. Great pass rushers. Added Jonathan Grenard. Jalen Carter's shoulders are now healthy. It's an elite defensive system. And if the offensive line stays healthy this year, and if Mekhi Lemon hits, essentially, this is still a top 10, top 12 offensive unit in the National Football League that has the potential of being a top 5, top 7 based on what Sean Mannion's scheme can do. And so there was a lot of drama inside the locker room last year. I think the majority of it was AJ Brown. I'm not worried about any of those other reports that have come out. I think that they're pretty much locked in.
So my only pushback to that, Thomas, because I think you're right. Right? Look, we all know how good this GM is. We all know how talented this roster is. We've seen this team win at the highest level. What's weird to me from the outside looking in is when you have a team with that much talent and that much respect. But a year ago, it was, do they have like the Sirianni thing? 1 year he's a hot candidate. The next year he's going to be fired, right? We all know how that goes in Philadelphia. 17 different people interviewed for the offensive coordinator position, 7 second interviewed. Like, that's not what we usually see. If the job is open in Kansas City, for example, we don't usually see 17 people. You don't have to go through that many. Why was it so hard this offseason to find the right fit for this offense? And then they find a fit that none of us really know. Mannion's so new to this. If everything is hunky-dory behind the scenes for Philly, why did that offseason portion get so rocky?
It's a good question. I mean, the official response, right? Because Jeffrey Lurie talked about this at the NFL owner meeting, the Eagles owner, and he said that their whole entire philosophy is to interview as many people as possible. That way they can pick people's brains and see what's going on and, work on a new scheme here and there. But I do think the big question for anyone being hired for the Eagle offensive coordinator position was how much leeway do I get, right? How much of this is my offense? Because I do think a historical problem in Philadelphia is that Nick Sirianni has meddled a little bit too much with the new offensive coordinators, which have been rotating year after year after year because they're winning so much, that it was kind of like, okay, if I'm going to take this job, I want to make sure that I can do whatever I want and not be stuck in the Sirianni system and the Sirianni ways. And so I think that they had to go ahead and get rid of that old style. They had to convince Nick Sirianni to take a backdoor approach to the offense, just be the culture guy, be the overall team leader, be the head coach. And once they got that figured out, then they started attacking candidates and trying to really figure out what they wanted their system and their scheme to be overall. Because again, this is supposedly, everything we've heard, completely different from the Eagle offense we've seen the past couple of years, which, by the way, did set, playoff records for points in 2024, and we're lighting the league up in 2022. And so it's not like it's been a bad offensive system. It just hasn't been a modernized offensive system. And so a lot of us were concerned about how long it was taking, but everything that we hear is that they love Sean Mannion, that they think that they found their guy, the future. And now we sit back and wait and see, because again, if the system works and if it is Sean McVay or it is Matt LaFleur, it's just modernized from the typical shotgun zone read up the middle and then an A.J. Brown stop route or an A.J. Brown in route or an A.J. Brown go route. Anything less vanilla than that is going to be exciting in Philadelphia.
I know this is a wild question to ask, considering Sirianni's been to 2 Super Bowls and has won 1 and has won, 11 plus games over the last 4 years. But do Eagles fans believe Nick Sirianni is a good coach?
I think most of them do. I think Eagle fans are Eagle fans notoriously, right? Eagle fans are very spoiled in the fact that they are one of the premier franchises in the National Football League, who also is one of the premier spotlighted franchises in the National Football League, right? We talk about the Dallas Cowboys all the time, and obviously I'm an Eagle fan. I like to rip on the Cowboys. But from a non-biased perspective, the Eagles are essentially as popular as the Cowboys nationally in terms of the media. Cowboys will still get more coverage on the big networks, but it's very close. But the Eagles have actually won something in my entire lifetime, right? I'm 30 years old. The Cowboys haven't won a Super Bowl since 1996 or whatever it was. So Philadelphia wins recently. And so when you go from a Super Bowl in 2022 to how bad and ugly the 2023 collapse was down the line, to then a Super Bowl in 2024, and then as disappointing as 2025 was, it does feel like your coach stays on the hot seat. And Sirianni doesn't help his case because he does say some goofy stuff, and his press conferences are kind of just long run-on sentences. They don't really tell you much overall. And he does have some of those weird sideline antics that are fun when you're winning, but also kind of annoying whenever you're losing. And so the fan base is very mixed on him, but it's very hard to just look at his overall production and go, this guy's dumb or this guy's not a good coach, because you can't win that many games over this long of a tenure. 5 years now, playoffs every single year, 2 NFC Championship game victories and 2 Super Bowls. He won 1, and he'd actually be a bad coach. Now, I think the main question you're asking here is what happens if the Eagles have a bad 2026? Could Sirianni be in the hot seat? I think certainly 100%. I think they were very close to getting rid of him at some point last season. There were reports of that. Decided to go and stick with him. Didn't pan out in the end. I think they would have to miss the playoffs and it'd be ugly for Sirianni to be fired. If they make the playoffs and lose in the first round, then you have a, depends on how it looks sort of conversation. But I think that he'll be fine unless the wheels fall off. And again, as I mentioned a couple of questions ago, it's a pretty darn good roster. A lot has to happen for the wheels to fall off of this train.
So whose seat is hotter, Sirianni or Jalen Hurts?
Probably Sirianni. I think they would keep Jalen Hurts over Nick Sirianni. The owner loves Jalen Hurts. I mean, this is something that I think nationally people need to understand. Jeffrey Lurie loves Jalen Hurts. He thinks that he is, from just a character perspective, from a physical person perspective to a player on the football field, they think that he's very, very good. Again, if Jalen Hurts goes out there and wins 4 games and stinks up the joint and is the 29th best quarterback in the National Football League, can there be conversations? Yes, because he doesn't have a lot of guaranteed money left on his contract. The infamous 2027 draft is coming up. You have an extra first-round draft pick now in 28. You could package to move up. But all Jalen Hurts has really done, despite some up and down statistical games and, some playoff games that were a little bit suspect, is win a lot. And whenever people talk about Jalen Hurts being on the hot seat, I always think back to okay, so Jalen Hurts has done all this the past 5 years. I just mentioned 2 Super Bowls, NFC Championship games, balled out in 2 Super Bowls as well, and won an MVP. Josh Allen's seat isn't hot, right? Now, Josh Allen's a much better quarterback. Josh Allen can't get to a Super Bowl. Joe Burrow's seat. How hot is Joe Burrow's seat? I think this year it should be a little bit hotter. Again, better quarterbacks on paper than Jalen Hurts, and I would take them in a fantasy draft or an overall NFL draft ahead of Jalen Hurts right now. But comparing them wins and statistics side by side, Jalen's dominated them when it actually matters most. And yet we never talk about how hot Lamar Jackson's seat is or the fact that the Ravens need to move off of Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson can't win an AFC Championship game. So I do think, all things considered, if Sirianni misses the playoffs, then it's ugly. There's definitely a chance that he could be fired. Jalen Hurts, though, would have to be really bad this year. And again, I just don't see that happening, but it's certainly possible.
Before we get you out of here, Thomas, I want to go back to the very beginning of this, the A.J. Brown trade. Look, a 5th-round pick, great, whatever, fine. I think that Howie Roseman is the best general manager in the National Football League, and it could go down as one of the best GMs in the history of the National Football League. How could he not get a 2027 first-round draft pick?
I think it's a couple of reasons. I think that GMs are really high on the 2027 draft, as you guys know. I think that we are, whether it's true or not, the 2027 NFL draft is being hyped as like the draft of all drafts. And so getting rid of a first-round draft pick in that draft is like getting rid of a first and a second in other drafts, or like, for example, this past draft, not considered a very high one. I think the knee issue is something that no one talks about. And a lot of us Eagle fans, myself included, really wanted to ignore during the A.J. Brown tenure. But now there's a report that came out yesterday that the Rams were very interested in A.J. Brown right before the NFL draft, but they did their medical kind of workup on him, and the knee was the reason that they were out. They're like, that knee's a ticking time bomb, right? And if you go through A.J. Brown's historical history with the knee, double knee surgery at Tennessee at a very young age. He comes to Philadelphia. He says after the Super Bowl, during the playoff run, he was getting the knee drained every single week before and after games. 2023, he misses that playoff loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because they played him in Week 18. He took a shot at the knee across the middle on a slant route, and then he got hurt again. And then 2024, again getting the knee drained. In 2025, he misses a game with the knee. He misses some training camp with the knee. And whether you think he lost a step or not is kind of up to your eyes, but a lot of people think he lost a step in 2025. He's going to be 29 years old. A lot of money left on that contract. And so I think all of those things combined, Howie Roseman sat back and said, you know what? A first-round draft pick is a first-round draft pick, and we would like to have it in 2027. But like you said, if there's a GM out there who has the leeway to push draft picks well into the future, knowing he has job security, it's 100% going to be Howie Roseman. And I'll also add the fact that Howie likes to do right by his players. He really thinks that if he sets the example for, let's say, a rookie who performs well, making sure he gets paid early, or, a free agent, making sure he gets paid fairly to come to Philadelphia, trading A.J. Brown to his desired destination, to me, signals to the rest of the National Football League is, you come to Philadelphia and you sign with the Philadelphia Eagles, you're going to be treated right. You're going to be used properly. You're going to get all these accolades. You're going to compete in playoff games and championships. And I'll still make sure I do right by you by the end. And I could see that as sort of a bat signal to future free agents. Like, even A.J. Brown, who caused all of this drama, and more is coming out as the hours progress on Twitter, whether true or not, we were willing to not ship him to Siberia and go be a Cleveland Brown. We were willing to ship him to a place where he wanted to go. And I think that played a factor into the lesser draft pick compensation, but I think in the long run will help Philadelphia out in terms of gathering future free agents and assets.